Hey dudes, HW here. Kind of an impromptu video, but I really need your help. I really need some feedback, and I need the feedback of the community about ToneX capture packs, what you want to see, how you're using the unit. It's a new platform. We've got the pedal, we've got the software, and so there's different use cases out there. And so my goal is to try to make some stuff that's useful, malleable, but that also is not too esoteric, maybe, not too needlessly complicated. And so I'll tell you what I've done. I pretty much completed the first Tone Junkie capture pack. It's this Trainwreck Express. And I don't think there's any Trainwreck stuff really up on ToneNet, except for I put a free one up using a Sur 212 cab. But I made this pack with my Marshall 412 from 1969. It's like my favorite cab, and to me it just goes well with the Trainwrecks I've had in the past. But there's all these people using different stuff, using it different ways, and I'm approaching this like, how should I build a pack like this? So I'll tell you what I've done, and then I'd love to hear your feedback down below. And this will help me, but it won't just help me. It'll help anybody else who's making packs, maybe worship tutorials, maybe anybody. I won't name drop a bunch of names, but some people have reached out to me. And they said, what are you doing here? How are you going to approach this thing? And I've said, well, here's how I'm approaching it with this first pack, and this might change. First of all, the very first thing I did were amp captures, amp and cab captures together. It's the free AC30. It's up on the Tone Junkie website. You can get that right now. It's free. I mean, try it out. It's nice. And it's still one of the most downloaded things up there on ToneNet for the last couple weeks. Now I've got this new Trainwreck, and I'll tell you what my approach has been. I prefer to capture amp and cab together. And I'm not opposed to doing it another way. I'm not opposed to adding directs and all those things. I don't think it's bad, nothing like that. But I'll tell you why I personally want to do it together. Here's an old microphone, right? Here's a Unidyne 3, okay? And say my hand is the speaker. I really view mic placement as having three variables, right? We've got the location, and let's say that's the center of the speaker, and I can come away from the center, and I'm going to change frequencies. I'm going to get less direct highs. I'm going to have less directivity, I might get more mid-range as I go out, and then I'm going to get a bunch of fluff and stuff, right? Okay, but clarity is going to be here, and then we're going to get a little warmer. The other thing I can do is go off axis, and I have this tilt, and I can point at the center, and I can move around here, and that's going to change the high end. The other thing I can do is come here and have proximity. And this is actually what I think is kind of the most important. Well, maybe not the most important, but proximity is something that I adjust when I'm making profiles or captures or whatever. And placement this way is often something I adjust. I usually don't jump from off axis to on axis, but I will eke out or eke in a little bit, maybe when a channel on an amplifier changes, maybe as we gain up, we start to get more bass, I might take out some of this proximity because I want less proximity effect. Why I do that is that when I recently did this Eddie Van Halen pack for the Kemper, and one of the things I learned from listening to Eddie's isolated guitar tracks it's very obvious that different parts of that record are recorded at very different times because the reverb changes. You can hear it's recorded. The reverb in the room completely changes from literally like a verse to boom, the riff comes in, the main riff on some song or, and you can hear, oh man, this could have been recorded different days. This could have been a different cabinet. This could be different mics. It could be that they recorded some stuff, then they started working on some other stuff. They left. They wanted to try a different amp. Eddie bought a new amp. He brought it in, and then they brought this other amp out for the leads, or, they moved. You can just hear it's different space in the room. And it really makes me, think like, do you think Eddie or Jimmy or anybody, Rick Rubin or anybody sets up the amp and goes, okay, now give me a full range of clean tones to dirty tones? No. If you're Kirk Hammett, You just all of a sudden pull up your sound. You know what I mean? Maybe you got a clean sound address, but you don't go through every channel of the amp. You use what you're using. If you're Eddie, you don't check all these. Well, what if I wanted a clean jazz tone? You don't do that because Eddie wasn't going to play a clean jazz tone, right? So the mic setup you choose is often a response to the sound you're trying to get. And so when I approach capturing amps, profiling amps, a lot of times I'm trying to take a little more of an exhaustive, clinical, tone junkie approach, right? Where I want every sound out of it. So that then leads to maybe I'm on channel 1 and I find a little placement that's really nice for channel 1, and I might move around and stuff, and I'm going to find something that works. But when I actually am starting to capture, to profile, I'll be trying the sounds and I'll have something here and it'll be off just a little bit from the center. And then I might go to channel 2. Maybe it's a Mesa Boogie that has a tweed switch. And when I click that tweed switch, I get a lot of mid-range, and all of a sudden, or maybe I get a lot of high end and a bright switch. Or maybe for a bright switch, I'm going to go, oh, that bright switch is really bright. Let me come out a little bit. And it's still bright. I still have that extended presence, but I'm taking off maybe some of the treble that I was trying to get by going a little closer to center. And then same thing too with proximity. Something that like a Princeton, if you want to get a clean Princeton, you're going to be running that amp at like 3 or less, because it's going to start to break up at 4 or 5. Princeton reverb. The other Princeton stays clean. But you're going to go, or a deluxe or whatever, right? You're going to go, maybe when the amp is really low, it sounds a little weak and it doesn't have a lot of bass. And especially with a little 8-inch or 10-inch speaker, you might really be pushing the amp all the way up to the grill cloth. And if you don't have a grill cloth, maybe even inside the concave of the cone, really right up there, because you want the proximity effect to add bass. But then once you get the amp going, what do Fenders do? They get all this loose, spitty bass, and that's why they don't stay tight like a Marshall. That's why they don't stay tight like a modern amp. They get loose. And so at some of those things, as you get that amp cooking, you might pull this back because you're already getting so much bass, it's already loose. You don't need this woofy factor coming in. So because of those things, those are the slight adjustments I do. But because of those things, those are EQ adjustments that happen. And it makes me go, I prefer to capture amps and cabs together. To me, it's one thing. It's a closed system, and I can control the sound. One thing I hear people complain about a lot, they go, oh, this IR sucks. And I go, what IR are you using? And they're like, I'm doing cleans on my Mesa Boogie Lone Star, and I'm pairing it with this Jensen Alnico from a Tweed Deluxe. I'm like, that's a terrible combination. Don't do that. Like that. and like, I don't know. Maybe that's a good combination. I'm just saying it's two things that in the real world, you couldn't pair those together. And so the voices don't go together. And that's just the way it is. But in the digital world, you can just start throwing anything together, and all of a sudden you're like, I hate these IRs. And it's like, well, no, you don't. You just, they're not with the right thing, right? It's a recipe. It's an equation. If people are like, I don't like sugar. I tried to have no sugar. Well, try having cookies with no sugar. It's not going to be very good. You know what I mean? So, analogies aside, can you let me know how you're using ToneX? Because what I'm doing for this first pack is I've made a bunch of studio captures where I've captured this whole amp. Now I'm going back and I'm doing directs. Now, for this amplifier in particular, I have 3 EQs. It's a single channel amp, but the Trainwrecks are very flexible because you have these multiple gain stages and tone and everything, and then a volume. You can do a lot with these things. And so I've got like a chimey EQ, a blues rock EQ, and a rockin' EQ, right? Where the sizzly high is on the rock and it's gained up. Blues rock is a little warmer, more mid-range. Chimey is a little more trying to be chimey, clean, edge of breakup, and breakup, overdrive, those things. But you're definitely getting that high-end chime jangle thing. And so I'm going to get those in directs, a couple of each of those EQs on different varying gain stages. And that's going to give me the directs. But naturally, I'm going to pair those with an IR. But what I found in my testing is what I found on every device, every unit, is that you can never place mics the same exact way twice. And so any IR you create always sounds a little different when you do a direct at the same exact settings. And then you pair it with an IR of a cabinet with those mics. And then you set it up in a studio the same way, same mic, same caps. There's always a little difference in the sound. And it's not a bad difference, but it's there. And so I know a lot of people like directs, so they can change the IRs up and stuff. So I'm doing some directs. I'm going to match it to an IR, or I'm going to pair it with an IR. I've thought about even tone matching these IRs, which I've already done, but I'm not sure if I'm going to put them in the pack, where I've tone matched the direct and the studio version with the IR, and so it adjusts that little bit of change, which I've never been able to really understand where that change is coming from, other than I think it's something about the convolution of the IR process, or could be just differences in the gear you. I really don't know. It's probably just the convolution process. That is how IRs get mathematically put together and stuff. So basically, I'm looking for feedback. This first pack is a bunch of studio stuff plus directs paired with an IR. It'll probably be tone matched IRs. I'll probably put those in. I'm liking them. But going forward, I don't know how I should build these things. Should I just, grab an IR of the rig and then capture all directs and just always put it that way? I could do that. That might be the easiest thing for me to do. That might be the least amount of work for me. So that's an advantage. But I also like the studio thing. I really like the little adjustments that I'm able to make along the way. And that becomes hard to do. And then the last option, I can sort of make the studio ones, make the directs, and then put in the IR, and then sort of tone match that IR to make sure the IR is getting us to the same spot. That's something. I'm all ears. I really am all ears. I want to bring people something they're really going to enjoy and use. So I'm all ears. How are you using this? How do you want to use it? And I'm going to try to, serve as many people as I can. All right. HW, out.